All right. Well, the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. We got an exciting show as always.
You know what? I'm going to interrupt you this time. And I'm going to show this off. Look at this sweater. Look at it. It's a zipper. Okay. Front zippers are very important. Let's just keep it real. Okay. You don't want to mess this up while you're putting your sweater on. Beautiful contrast with the dark color and then the light color, strings, I guess you can call them, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, no, you guys don't get it. See that pocket? There's another pocket in there.
Oh, no, there
TYT
isn't.
hoodies.
No
TYT
way.
hoodies are the best. No,
I can't believe there's another pocket in there.
Let me just say,
saw that coming.
I didn't know what this was going to be. I wasn't expecting this package. And then all of a sudden I noticed that there is a package in the mail. And I'm like, oh, what is that? And when I saw it was a hoodie, I literally screamed for happiness and joy. Yeah. I love these hoodies. So Shop TYT, thank you for sending this over to me. I absolutely love it. I wear my green TYT hoodie all the time. I love that I have a black color now that'll go with anything. So it's excellent.
By the way, I noticed that the thugs over at shoptyt.com did not send me any of those new hoodies. It's probably the only TYT merch I don't own. That looks good. I like the logo on there. Anyways, I have a shirt too that I haven't worn in a long time, and it's relatively new. It's this one. Take out the trash in 2020. And now it doesn't say trash, and it doesn't say MAGA. We're just saying. Shop
we can put two and two together. Yes, love it.
So if you want to be a little bit more aggressive in your neighborhood. So if you live in a blue state, they'll love it. Just a little careful in the red states. Anyway, so we're going to talk about some of the red states and the devastation there. Look, we got a tough job doing a show that is relatively optimistic and at times fun through disaster after disaster after disaster. You got Trump, you got progressives losing, you got coronavirus. I mean, wow, we got hit from all sides. So anyway, but the one side we have completely fortified is you guys. So you've been helping us through this coronavirus, which we absolutely positively need, and we got to keep it going. Right now, we're at 208,460 for the month, as Brett will show you here at tyt.com/go. Thank you to Joe from LA for giving the 50,000 matching grant that put us over the top. But let's see if we can get it without the matching grant so that we can carry it over to May like we did in April, because we got to get 200,000 every month. Otherwise, we're in trouble here during these dark days. So tyt.com/go. We love you guys for it. Let's see if we can get 210 by the end of the show. All right, Anna, let's get started.
All right. An additional 4.4 million Americans have filed for unemployment, bringing the total number to 26.5. And I really do want to emphasize that there is a backlog of unemployment claims, meaning that the actual number is likely to be much higher. Now, that is a lot of people, and keep in mind that many states, specifically red states, and states like Florida, which is still considered purple, don't really have a robust unemployment system. And so in Florida specifically, only 6% of people who filed for unemployment actually had their unemployment requests fulfilled. And so many people are suffering right now. For instance, more than 2/3 of U.S. Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and experts predict that people in service jobs, manufacturing, and construction will likely be hit hardest by the upcoming economic turmoil, which represents more than 1/3 of the U.S.'s labor force, about 53 million people. Now, one other piece of data that I think is incredibly relevant is the difference we're seeing in the number of unemployment claims in blue states versus red states. Politico found some interesting data, finding that job losses are actually piling up in states like Michigan, a lot of battleground states that provided Donald Trump his victory. So in Michigan, for instance, more than 1 in 4 workers applied for unemployment benefits in the past 5 weeks. Then you go to Pennsylvania, another key Rust Belt state that voted for Trump in 2016. Nearly 1/4 of the workforce has filed for an unemployment claim since mid-March. And then Ohio is seeing more than 17% of workers filing jobless claims, outpacing the national average of 16.1%, as is Minnesota, a state Trump narrowly lost. Now, if you are a Republican or a conservative hoping that there will be financial relief because of Republican leadership, you would be wrong, because now that the conversation has shifted away from corporate bailouts and toward relief for average Americans and for states, you get this kind of talk from people like Mitch McConnell.
The next debate, which I assume will relate to state and local government relief, needs to be when the Senate is back in session with full participation. And in the meantime, also take a look at how much debt we've racked up and not try to wave something through the Senate of that consequence without full participation.
Oh, now we're talking about the debt. When we were passing trillions of dollars in legislation to help big business, which coincidentally happens to be the donors of Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, there was no talk of debt. When we were letting the Fed print an extra $4 trillion to give to exclusively to big businesses, there was no talk of debt. There was no talk of any of that. But now that they're on to the fourth stage where they would help the average American, they're like, there's debt. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? When it's their donors, never, ever, ever ask how you're going to pay for it. When it's you guys, I don't know, man. I mean, how the hell would we help a citizen? Citizens don't pay our campaign contributions. The Koch brothers do, ExxonMobil does, etc. So now let me give you a sense of the politics of it as well as the human toll. So first of all, most Americans are onto these guys. By the way, that's part of the reason why Tucker Carlson does shows where he hits big business all the time, because he's sensing that rage on the right-wing side too. 77% of Americans say that Congress largely helped big business. Hey, and they say everybody's low information voters. No, they figured it out. Yeah, their gut tells them what is obvious. And the numbers say it too. Yes, you're absolutely right. They did. They largely helped big business. And Americans know it, including Republicans. So then when you look at the devastation that's coming to the average American, and I'm going to explain in a second why it's so much worse for the workers than it is for the businesses. So you've got 43% of Americans that now have either lost a job or had their wages cut. 43% of American workers. That's a giant number. It's 52% of low-income workers, so they've been hit even harder. 53% of low-income workers are saying they don't know how they're going to pay the bills. They already have bills they can't pay. 53%. Among middle-class Americans, 25% say they don't know how they're going to pay the bills. And even among the highest income earners in America, 11% saying they're having trouble paying the bills. So this is a rolling tide of economic disaster, and it's mainly hitting, of course, citizens, actual human beings, but they are prioritized last. The $1,200 that they put in there in the beginning was a tiny fraction of the overall money spent by Congress. And to give you a sense of context there, the average rent in the country is $1,231. So it doesn't even cover 1 month of rent, let alone food and all of your other expenses. And then what do you do in the second month when now all of a sudden Mitch McConnell and the Republicans go, we don't have any money left. So good luck to you.
So, Cenk, yesterday on the show with John, we were discussing a story that broke regarding how Mitch McConnell thinks that rather than funding the states and helping them to stay afloat in the middle of this crisis, it makes more sense to just allow them to go bankrupt. And so, look, sometimes when we do stories, I'm like so mentally overwhelmed with getting the show produced and ready that I haven't really properly sat down to allow the story to enrage me as much as it should. But we all pay our federal taxes. We pay our federal. So, okay. So if Mitch McConnell thinks that states should just go bankrupt and we shouldn't ask for help, then why are we paying federal taxes? I mean, if all that money goes to wars, all that money goes to nonsense, they keep cutting the social safety net over and over again. Like, if we can't rely on the federal government for anything, why do we respect it? Why do we pay our federal taxes? No, it's enraging, especially when you consider that those corporations getting those bailouts got that giant Trump tax cut, $2 trillion over 10 years. And then on top of that, they got bailed out and haven't been paying their taxes. Sometimes they get a tax rebate when they file their taxes. Why do they get a bailout and the American people get nothing and the states get nothing? It's disgusting.
Well, the establishment often says that progressives are too loud, too aggressive, and we don't respect civility enough. In fact, the LA Times, in choosing to endorse my opponent in my brief congressional run, said basically Cenk is right about the issues, but he's too aggressive in fighting back, and we prefer civility. Well, this is what civility's gotten us. Nonstop surrender to Republicans and their corporate donors, but honestly, the donors of a lot of the Democrats too. And so that's why they work together. And when we point that out, we're the bad guys. Why do we point it out? We point it out to protect you guys, because apparently no one else will. So you got prioritized last again. Now, let me give you a sense of why there's in such a panic to give the overwhelming majority of the money to big business. So when you think about business, what are the costs of a business, right? You've got mainly employee costs. So now a lot of the businesses have already laid people off or cut their wages, so they've mitigated that cost. So especially the ones like restaurants that aren't open, so that obviously they had to furlough or let go, et cetera. There were the waiters, bartenders. We understand that. So who gets hurt the most there? The workers do, because businesses already gotten rid of that cost. So then what cost remains? Fixed costs remain. Well, okay, well then what's the fixed cost? Your main fixed cost usually is rent and interest payments. Okay, well, rent, sometimes now you can't pay the rent. Well, that goes to real estate. Well, real estate, when they don't get the rent, they can't pay the money that they owe to the banks. And wait, the other big cost was interest for a lot of big businesses. That also goes to the banks. Oh, so all of that money at the end of the day is used to pay the banks. And the banks run this place. So that's why they immediately got $6 trillion to make sure that the big banks were okay. Now, did the executives of those banks and the shareholders of those banks share their hundreds of billions of dollars in profits with you guys over the last 10, 20 years? Nope, they didn't share any of the profits. But now, when you desperately need help, they say, hey, all of a sudden we don't have any money. Why? Where'd it go? It went to big business, which then gave it to the big banks.
It's truly, truly disgusting. But there are some developments with funding for small businesses. So I want to share that story with all of you. So the House of Representatives voted today on the bill to provide additional funding to small businesses. As we've reported earlier, the funds for small businesses ran out quickly. And part of the problem was that a number of big companies that are publicly traded applied for these loans and were approved. And the funny part about all of this is how the Treasury Department is now pretending as if they didn't know that there was lack of oversight and that this money wasn't going to go to people or companies, I should say, that shouldn't have applied for it in the first place. I'll give you what the response is, what the update is from the Treasury Department. But before I do so, I think that the only commentary that was worth listening to on the House floor was that of the progressive members of Congress. Here is the notorious squad speaking out about the flaws in this legislation.
But it's also indefensible for us not to focus on replenishing the coffers of Americans and focus on making sure they are able to support paying their rent, making sure that our cities and states are not going bankrupt, and making sure American families are not dying of hunger.
This bill is only necessary because in the last bill, Republicans prioritized a $500 billion gift to corporations that turned around and laid off workers who bailed them out. Our people need us to prioritize public health and testing, and they need reoccurring monthly relief payments now.
It is a joke when Republicans say that they have urgency around this bill. The only folks that they have urgency around are folks like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and Shake Shack. Those are the people getting assistance in this bill. You are not trying to fix this bill for mom and pops, and we have to fight to fund hospitals, fighting to fund testing. That is what we're fighting for in this bill. It is unconscionable. If you had urgency, you would legislate like rent was due on May 1st and make sure that we include rent and mortgage relief for our constituents. Thank you very much.
So I just want to note that the demands from the progressive members of the House were not met. So they did not receive the additional funding they wanted for the states, for instance. There is no additional funding to provide recurring $2,000 payments to Americans who are unable to work right now. But there is additional funding for the small businesses. This version of the stimulus is nearly $500 million. So it's something, right? I'm sorry, $1 billion. So it's something, but it's still not enough to help average Americans pay their bills, pay their rent. Rent is obviously coming up soon. I also wanted to just note that in that video featuring Rashida Tlaib, there was a little girl, a picture of a little girl behind her. And that little girl died from COVID-19 in Michigan. She was only 5 years old. Her mother is a police officer. Her father is a firefighter. So we're talking about essential workers who are out there not only risking their own lives, but by being exposed to this virus, they're also risking the lives of their family members. And this is the reality that average Americans are facing right now. And it's devastating that they can't rely on Congress to do something to help them.
Today, we're passing 50,000 deaths in America from coronavirus. These are all at a minimum. We have 5% of the world's population and now over a quarter of the world's deaths in coronavirus. We have handled this with great ineptitude and incompetence, and we have prioritized both the health and the wealth of the average American at the very, very bottom. So, guys, we're not selectively picking fiery speeches from Congress. You're only seeing Justice Democrats because they're the only ones fighting. So, yes, other Democrats give timid speeches, but do they fight back and try to prioritize the average person more? No. In fact, the Just Democrats that you just saw doing that are oftentimes shunned. Hey, we have a deal with Mitch McConnell. It's a great deal. We have a great deal with Kevin McCarthy and Donald Trump. You guys don't throw a monkey wrench into this. Most of our donors are we're being wonderfully bipartisan. Yeah. Okay, so I take those Just Democrats over the rest of Congress combined, and that's actually super easy. And by the way, put more Just Democrats in. The elections are still going. JustDemocrats.com/. Just go to JustDemocrats.com. You'll see all of the candidates that are left and how you can contribute. All right, now onto the bill itself. Look, there's nothing wrong with the helping the small businesses. That portion of it is great. It's coming in the third version of relief. Yes, there was also a portion for small businesses in an earlier version. But the priority order should be citizens first, meaning the workers and the average American, then small business, then big business. And of course, since this corrupt Congress, it has gone exactly the opposite. The great lion's share has gone to big business. Now they're finally getting back to small business because the small amount that they gave for small business ran out immediately. That's why they had to replenish here. I'm glad they are. And now the fourth version of relief would be for actual Americans. And that's where the Republicans now are drawing the line and saying, well, we got debt. How are you going to pay for that? Workers. When's the last time they gave me a campaign contribution? By the way, the reason.
And by the way, AOC. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, no. And if folks say, hey, well, look, AOC and the rest of the Just Democrats fight for the average person because that's who they get their donations from. They get it $5, $20 at a time from average people because they don't take corporate PAC money. To which I say, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in regard to Republicans all of a sudden pretending like they care about debt or the national debt, AOC did respond to that worry or that concern by saying something very simple. And I'm glad to hear someone in Congress say this clearly. let's roll back that $2 trillion tax cut. If you're worried about the deficit and if you're worried about our national debt, let's raise some taxes. Love it. And she's absolutely right. Now, on to the Treasury Department. That money did run out quickly. And it's been a big concern that some of that small business money went to companies that shouldn't have even applied to it. And now all of a sudden, the Treasury Department, the same Treasury Department that refused to provide real oversight or guidelines initially when it came to this money, is pretending like they didn't know and that they're going to scold companies that apply but shouldn't be applying. So according to the Washington Post, the Treasury Department on Thursday issued guidance making it much harder for publicly traded companies to qualify for money that was supposed to go to small businesses, threatening penalties in some cases if firms don't repay money they had already received. And the Federal Reserve announced that it would be disclosing the names of companies that receive funding from its assistance programs after complaints that the central bank wasn't being transparent about where the taxpayer aid was going. So sometimes when you shame people and you fight hard enough, you'll get these types of concessions. And I think that transparency is incredibly important. I don't believe Steve Mnuchin. I don't believe the Treasury Department at all when they're pretending to be shocked and chagrined, as you'd say, Cenk, about what's been happening with these small business funding. This is the way that the country has been operating for a long time now. It's just that enough Americans are finally speaking out and they're demanding better.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm glad they finally are getting to small businesses again since the money ran out so quickly. But for God's sake, don't forget the people you're supposed to be serving and representing the most, which is the actual human beings of this country.
When we come back from the break, Donald Trump throws a Republican under the bus after encouraging this Republican to do something. It's incredible. And then later in the show, actually, it's a post-game story. So if you're not a member, you should become one. We are going to dunk on Cenk and his notorious interview with someone who just got a huge promotion within the Pentagon. We'll be right back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be. Featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity, the UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let's go to your comments from the member section. I love this one. The Good Doctor writes in, I've been a member for a few months, but I never realized the enjoyment of just being with members and fewer insane comments. Thank you. Well, thank you right back.
That is a perk.
It is. It is. So, guys, look, we tell you there's a couple different ways to become a member. On YouTube, you can click the join button underneath the video. But TYT.com/join gets you membership through our website. That's where you have the members interact with each other. It's a community. And those are the comments we read first live on air. Okay, there's all wonderful parts of being a YouTube member, too. But I'm just telling you on the website, that's a huge advantage. TYT.com/join. All right, Kiddo says, nothing makes a woman happier than pockets, except for another pocket in those pockets.
Definitely. 100%. You can never have enough pockets.
So she was
unless you're wearing like cargo pants. Like cargo pants can become a bit much. But like on a hoodie, pocket within a pocket is good.
Yeah, so Anna was wearing the TYT hoodie earlier, but it's hot in LA now. So anyway, check that out at shoptyt.com. All right, Alex D in YouTube Super Chat writes in, if the corporations have all the money, then why would they need the banks? Well, Alex, number one, they don't have the money anymore. They did stock buybacks to artificially inflate their stock price. And you think, oops, so that's largely wasted. No, they already took it home in executive pay. So because of the higher amounts at the end of the year, the higher stock prices, the executives got much bigger bonuses. So when the price crashed later, yeah, for the company, it was a total waste of money. And now they don't have money when they need it. But for the executives, they got rich. And that money's already in their house. And you're never going to get it back. So that's how this game is played. Now they still have debt. Almost all corporations have debt to banks. And that's why they need the banks. Okay, anyway, last one's kind of a long, fascinating one. But Franklin Sharpslicer writes in on YouTube Super Chat. Adventures. Back in 1981, I and a crew of 12 built a Tom Sawyer raft and floated down the Missouri River. 1,420 river miles. Wow. 2 months. Wow. It was fun. Like the virus, it changed our lives. I hope in a good way, though. Anyway, now TYT does. Salute to Casper. From Casper, Missouri, and adds Cenk too. Okay.
Sorry, Cenk. Sorry.
It's all good. Hey, look, they live in Casper, Missouri. They don't live in Cenk, Missouri. Though one day. All right. Thanks for using YouTube Super Chat, and of course, you could always donate to our audience funding drive also from tyt.com/go. Speaking of which, we're going to have a giant show for you guys in a couple of weeks where I'm going to unveil my 5-year plan, and we have a lot more surprises, so don't miss that big show. We'll tell you more about it as time goes on. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. Donald Trump threw Georgia Governor Brian Kemp under a bus after he was honestly seen encouraging governors to reopen businesses in their own states. In fact, we just learned that a source close to Trump spoke to CNN and said the night before Trump threw Brian Kemp under the bus, he and Pence actually gave him a call and gave him kudos for opening businesses up starting Friday, meaning tomorrow. Certain businesses can start opening in the state of Georgia. So CNN reports that Trump and Pence complimented Kemp on his performance as Georgia governor, the source said. Another person familiar with the call said it went well. And then the next day, this is what Trump said publicly. Take a look.
The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, that I disagree strongly with his decision to open certain facilities which are in violation of the Phase 1 guidelines for the incredible people of Georgia. They're incredible people. I love those people. They're great. They've been strong, resolute, but at the same time, he must do what he thinks is right. I want him to do what he thinks is right. But I disagree with him on what he's doing.
Amazing.
Okay.
Amazing.
When he throws the word strongly in there, that's meant to say like, hey, now watch yourself, right? And Kemp's got to be thinking, what just happened to me? You call me yesterday and tell me I'm doing a great job and you're glad I'm reopening. You come out the next day and throw me under the bus in front of the whole country and say you strongly disagree with me. Yeah, welcome to Trump land. What do you think was going to happen?
Well, what's going on? I thought I was asymptomatic. Turns out I got symptoms of being cucked. That's exactly what happened to him. 100%. Wow.
He's got the cuck virus. Well, that's because Trump, A, changes his mind all the time. B, doesn't care about any allies. He'll undercut anyone. And C, has no mind to begin with. So probably right before the press conference, someone told him, hey, you know what? If it turns out there's a flare-up of cases in Georgia and you back Kemp, you'll be blamed for all the deaths. And then you might lose Georgia, which in some scenarios could be a swing state. And then so he comes out and goes, oh, who cares about Kemp and allies and Republicans? I don't care. All I care about is me. So, okay, now that you told me that, which I didn't know before because I'm an idiot, okay, yeah, you know what? I strongly disagree. In case something goes wrong, I want him blamed, not me. And that's how this thing works, man. So, and no Republican believes that it's going to happen to them until Trump does it to them.
It is incredible how many case studies do we have now of Donald Trump showing how little loyalty, he has no loyalty to anyone, really, even members of his own family, right? With the exception of Ivanka. He loves Ivanka. But how do you put everything on the line to be like a Trump sycophant, which, by the way, Brian Kemp absolutely has been, thinking that Trump will never turn on you? Of course he's going to turn on you. Trump only thinks about himself. That's it. And this story actually gets even more petty because keep in mind that Brian Kemp is the person who appointed Senator Kelly Loeffler to her position. So she is a U.S. senator. She never had to go through an election. She was appointed by Brian Kemp. A person who wanted to run for that seat was Doug Collins. In fact, now he's running against Loeffler, basically primarying her as a Republican. And so what's incredible is like he's still bitter about what Brian Kemp did in appointing Loeffler instead of him. And so he decided to do an interview to like wag his finger at Kemp as well. Let's take a quick look at that.
Well, look, the president wants the country open. I want the country open. The governor wants the country open. The problem is, how do you do it? And I think that's the problem with leadership. Yeah. Leadership's about communicating, and when you're not communicating clearly, look, the governor did not take away the stay-at-home order, but yet selectively decided certain businesses can open up. I'll tell you this, my concern is not having the local input into that, because up in my area, which is just north of Atlanta, we're having an increase in cases. In my local hospital, they're seeing a rapid increase. So it is, depending on the spot, that's where I think locals needed to have more input, and it's made people nervous. I think clear communication is what has to happen. But when you're telling people to still stay at home, but yet we're going to open certain businesses, that creates a problem in which people are not sure what to do.
And just to give you some updated numbers, Cenk, real quick, Georgia has tested less than 1% of its population for COVID-19, but there are already nearly 21,000 cases confirmed, and there have been 838 deaths. So Georgia is struggling right now with coronavirus, and Kemp has decided that some businesses can begin opening tomorrow, Friday, and other businesses can start opening on Monday of next week.
So let me decipher for you what Doug Collins just said. He said, well, in essence, of course, the governor and I don't disagree. We're both Republicans, and big business, reopen as soon as possible. So, but I hate him because he picked Loeffler instead of me. And I mean, I probably hate him more than I hate any Democrat because of that action, because he's personally thwarted my political career. So I'm going to go on TV and blame him. But what am I going to blame him for, since we really agree? Well, I'm going to be, you should have consulted with more locals. Oh, that's a good one. Conservatives like more local control, so I'll throw that local word in there and find a way to present. And the other one is just leadership, general leadership, bad communication. So, okay, what do you disagree with? Well, communication. They don't disagree. It's petty politics. And the reality is Trump was also pushing for reopening. If Trump actually was against Kemp and Doug Collins was actually against Kemp philosophically and said, no, wait a minute, they're not being nearly careful, Kemp is not being nearly careful enough, then I'd say, great, that's wonderful. I'm happy to have him on the side of rationality. But it's all political maneuvering and has almost nothing to do with reality.
You're 100% right. Well, let's move on to a Democrat who had a response to an important question that I don't think was okay. So let's talk about that. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo was asked about people who are desperate to get back to work because they have not received enough government assistance or relief in order to be able to pay their bills and feed their families. And so a reporter asked him, what should they do? And just get a load of the way he reacted.
You can hear, but there are protesters outside right now honking their horns and raising signs. Their point is the cure can't be worse than the illness itself. Yeah. What is your response to them?
The illness is death. What is worse than death? I understand the economic hardship. We all feel it. The question is, what do you do about it? And do you put public health at risk? And do you drive up the number of deaths? for it because you have no idea how to reopen now.
So they're saying that, is there a fundamental right to work if the government can't get me the money when I need it? Is there a fundamental right
you want
to
go to work? Go take a job as an essential worker. Do it tomorrow. Right? You're working.
I am.
You're an essential worker. So go take a job as an essential worker.
But the people aren't hiring because of the
No, there are
pandemic.
people hiring. You can get a job as an essential worker. So now you can go to work and you can be an essential worker and you're not going to kill anyone.
Okay, so before I get into the reasons why I didn't like that answer, I want you to jump in, Cenk.
Yeah, so of course that's not a good answer. That's flippant. There's now, over 24 million, is it up to 26.5 million? I'm starting to lose track of unemployed in the last 5 weeks. I think it's 26.5. And so there are not 26.5 million essential worker jobs available. That's ridiculous. And so, look, Cuomo, there's a political part of this, and then there's the really, really important policy part of it. In terms of the politics of it, Cuomo has had skyrocketing poll numbers for a couple of reasons. Number one, usually leaders go up in time of crisis. Number two, he's being compared to the one other guy on TV, that's Donald Trump. And by comparison, he looks like a god, right? Because Trump's a clown and doesn't know anything. It says half the things he says are factually incorrect. He does show and tell with swabs and Q-tips. I mean, compared to that, Cuomo looks like an unbelievable leader and a total adult. And then the third reason, honestly, is most people don't see the whole press conference. Almost nobody sees it, right? So they see clips. But the clips that people are seeing most now, and I'm seeing it in my personal life too, is the ones where Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo are talking on TV and they're ribbing each other, okay? And people love that. They're going supernova viral online. So the main thing that people are seeing is, oh my God, Andrew loves his brother Chris, but they have such a good relationship. Boom, skyrocketing poll numbers. So when he says stuff like this, people are barely going to see it and they're barely going to care. He's still going to have huge numbers. Now, in terms of the policy, I think that answer there was really problematic, not just because there aren't that many jobs as essential workers, but because he needs to, and Democrats need to, better comprehend and address the tsunami of pain that's coming for the average American. Because once you run out of about a month's pay, and once you run out of that $1,200 check, which is going to happen so quick, then you're screwed. 43% of Americans have either lost their job or had their salaries cut. Man, we are going to have unbelievable pain in this country any day now. So leaders like Cuomo better get themselves right and understand and empathize with that pain that's coming.
So my issue with that answer was that it was actually an opportunity for him to brag about his leadership. And it was weird that he gave that flippant answer, because the first thing that I wanted to do was figure out, well, how is New York handling unemployment claims? Because look, yes, Manhattan is very expensive to live in, but, keep in mind that the federal government, the one good thing that came out of that stimulus law was the money that will be added on top of state unemployment benefits, which is $600 a week on top of what the state is giving you per week, right? But the problem is that states have been overwhelmed with the number of people applying for unemployment. So I was curious to see if Andrew Cuomo has done anything as the leader of the state to help process unemployment claims. And he's actually done a lot. I think that there's still room for improvement. There's no question. But he's been way more aggressive than, politicians in Florida, for instance, where only 6% of unemployment claims have been fulfilled. So just to give you some specific examples, between the weeks ending March 14th and April 11th, 1.2 million New Yorkers have filed unemployment claims, a number far greater than the 300,000 who submitted unemployment claims during the 2008 economic crisis, right? But in response to that, They hired an additional 2,700 workers to process unemployment applications. They expanded the hours that jobless individuals can file claims, and they sent $2.2 billion to 1.1 million unemployed New Yorkers. So, like, they're working on it, and that would have been a great opportunity for him to say, look, here's what we're doing. We know that people are struggling right now and getting through the system. We're addressing it because we know that people are hurting. Instead of using the opportunity for messaging that shows that he's doing something and he's actually connecting with people who are stressed out about their finances, he was just so dismissive. And I don't know why he did that. I thought that was really dumb on his part.
Yeah. So Cuomo's done a lot of things wrong here, and New York Times actually did good reporting on that. He's also done a lot of things right. So it's a mixed record. But for him, but much more importantly, at the federal level, for guys like Mitch McConnell, who at the end of the day control massive trillions of dollars in federal spending more than anybody else does, I think they're going to get hit with something they're not at all ready for. So when I briefly ran for Congress, I talked to about 1,000 people, all economic ranges, including the poor and the middle class, which these guys haven't talked to in decades, if ever. Okay. And I'm telling you right now, once that money runs out and you're out of a job, and then there's going to be massive desperation. People are not going to know how to even get food, let alone pay the rent. And when that desperation hits and we're all supposed to stay at home, but you got no way of providing for your family, I mean, it could be mayhem. So yeah. I think they have no idea what's about to come.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, turns out Las Vegas has the kind of mayor you'd expect Las Vegas to have. We'll be right back.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Time for just a couple of comments here on YouTube Super Chat. We've got the Breaker of Walls. Sounds pretty cool. Writing, sorry, guys, you got to defend Andrew Cuomo. Strange times. He's gone at the COVID idiots who are protesting. Cuomo did cut Medicaid, though, he adds. That's true, and that's why it's complicated times. And Chris Durant in the member section says, 2 big takeaways. You kind of have to almost admire the brazen shamelessness of Trump, almost. And this wouldn't happen if Georgia had a competent and savvy governor like Stacey Abrams. That is absolutely right. And that election, of course, was stolen from her. All right, TYT.com/go to keep the Young Turks vibrant, healthy, and make sure we're getting the message out throughout all these times. Okay, Anna, what's next?
Just a quick answer to a question I get a lot on Twitter from the ladies watching the show. Yesterday's lipstick was Mullet Over by Mac. Today is Please Me by Mac. There's just too many of those comments, and I feel bad never answering them. So there you go. All right, let's move on to the rest of the news. So Las Vegas's mayor is urging casinos to open, even though luckily she doesn't have the power to force them to do that. And so here's Mayor Carolyn Goodman talking to Anderson Cooper on CNN in a crazy interview.
You don't believe there should be any social distancing? You don't believe that this is
Of course I believe there should be. Of course.
How do you do that in a casino?
That's up to them to figure out. I don't own a casino. I don't know anything
Wait a
about
minute. I'm sorry. You're the mayor of Las Vegas, and you want casinos to be open, even though you have no authority, thankfully, over casinos. But
Yes.
you say open them up, but you have no responsibility about how that would be done safely?
No, you're blurring. No, you're blurring.
You said it's
I'm
not your
going
job.
There. I am not a private owner of a hotel. I wish I were. And I would have the cleanest hotel with 6 feet figured out for every human being comes in there.
If you can't figure out how to do this safely, why, as mayor of a city that you were responsible for the people's safety, are you calling for something that you have no plan for how it would be done safely?
I am not a private owner. That's the competition in this country, the free enterprise, and to be able to make sure that what you offer the public meets the needs of the public. Right now, we're in a crisis health-wise, and so for a restaurant to be open or a small boutique to be open, they better figure it out. That's their job. That's not the mayor's job.
Oh, this woman is unhinged. By the way, let's just be completely honest about the economic system we're functioning under. We do not have a free market, okay? These corporations are getting bailed out. That is not a free market. A free market allows them to fail, okay? And then in a free market with free enterprise, where the government sits back and does nothing in providing guidelines for these businesses, how exactly would the free market work if you're dealing with a pandemic where customers, clients, business literally dies? Like, I don't know. I want to ask Dave Rubin, do they then go and write a negative, like, Yelp review after they've already died as a result of the pandemic? Like, how stupid is this?
It's actually, believe it or not, worse than that. Because in the pandemic, so let's say one restaurant opens up and they do a great job of being clean, as she says. And so free market's going to reward them. The other restaurant opens up, they do a bad job at being clean, and their customers get coronavirus. They then go home and give coronavirus to the people who were at the good restaurants that were clean. First of all, there is no such thing as a clean restaurant. They recirculate the air, and the virus is in the air. So, oops, okay. And the air conditioning is a huge part of it, as Anderson Cooper talked about later in the interview. They're in Vegas, in the middle of the desert. There's no way to open up those restaurants or casinos or hotels without air conditioning. So you can't have a contagious disease where the free market has good restaurants that keep things open and people safe. That makes no sense in a context like this. But these are not thoughtful people. Her husband is the former mayor of Las Vegas. Politics is all about name recognition and branding. She won because she was his wife and she has the last name Goodman. So we're expecting her to be smart and competent. That's not what politics is about at all. It's about your name and it's about who you serve. And which then leads us to, wait, why is she doing this? And I have the answer, but Anna, I wanted to see if you had more details before I do the big reveal of why.
Okay, I'm excited to hear it. And also keep in mind, it's not just about restaurants. She wants casinos to open. And what do you think you do at casinos? You have your hands all over the place, right? You have it on the slot machines, you have it on the cards, you have it on the chips. So are they going to disinfect everything every time someone touches something? Of course they're not. This is so ridiculous. And I'm glad that she has no power in forcing the casinos to do this. The state's gaming control board will ultimately make the decisions and come out with the guidelines. And they've already said that they plan on following through with the federal guidelines on when to open businesses. And I'm glad that it seems like there are some adults making decisions there. But let's hear a little more from this mayor who, again, luckily has no power over these casinos.
One of those lives is a tragic loss. But when you count 150 versus 2.3 million, you have to say, we have to open up. We have to go back. Our bus drivers, our
But hasn't it been
cleaners,
because of social
restaurants.
distancing that the numbers have been what they are?
How do you know until we have a control group? We offer to be a control group. Anybody who knows anything about statistics knows that, for instance, you have a vaccine.
You're offering
the
citizens of Las Vegas to be a control group to see if your theory on social distancing works or doesn't work.
Wrong. Absolutely wrong. Don't put words in my mouth.
You just said we'll be a control group.
Excuse me. What I said was I offered to be a control group, and I was told by our statistician you can't do that because people from all parts of southern Nevada come in to work in the city. And I said, oh, that's too bad, because I know when you have a disease, you have a placebo.
The people of Las Vegas should be aware that their representative, in that their mayor, is okay with them serving as a test group. It's amazing.
No, that interview, her comments went from dumb to insane. A placebo, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is when you do an experiment. Let's say you're testing a drug. Okay, you give the drug to a certain group, and then for a control group, you give a placebo, which means you don't give them anything. And so
like a sugar pill or something.
Right. And so you give them a pill that doesn't work, that isn't medicine. And so that's to see how many people in a situation like this, in this context, how many people would die normally when you just let the virus spread. She just volunteered her citizens to be the control group, the placebo, that die indiscriminately. I've never seen anything like that in my life. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard a so-called representative of anyone ever say. And so then that leads me to, why is she doing this? So she claims she's really, really worried about the hundreds of thousands of workers in Vegas. Now that's plausible, right? So looked into it. If she was right, if she's a Democrat and it's the unions pushing her to get back in there because they're really worried that people aren't going to have jobs, that might be an answer. No, the culinary union says, oh, hell no. No, I'm not going to put my workers back in there and get them killed. So it turns out already 11 members of the culinary union alone in Vegas have been killed already, and they shut it down pretty quickly. Imagine how many will die normally. So the unions are totally against this. She's an independent, backs Republicans all the time. I know you're shocked by that. So then you read a little further. What's the one group pushing to reopen? Wynn Resorts. So it turns out it's the casinos who want to reopen because they're, of course, worried about the money. And who does the mayor of Las Vegas work for? The people who are the donors. And the casinos are the major donors in Las Vegas. So name recognition, plus you get money from corporations, and that's how you win politics in America, because the entire system is rotten and corrupt to the core. So in a sense, Goodman is the product of that control group. And so that's why she goes out there and says insane things, because basically her backers told her, reopen those goddamn casinos. We don't care how many people die.
In our post game today, we have wonderful topics I can't wait to talk about, including an old interviewee that Cenk had on the show back in 2009. He's in the news today, and we're going to play our favorite clip from that interview and talk about the new promoted position he has. Also, a lawyer gets arrested for making death threats toward a governor. That and more, tyt.com/join to become a member. Have a great night.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.